This is John Reeves, and welcome to the Truth as Medicine podcast. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional lands of the Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria, whose ancestors have lived, cared for, and sustained these lands since time immemorial. We honor the Wiyot, Matole, and Nongado peoples, whose descendants continue to live, pray, and protect their homelands here along the rivers and redwoods of the Humboldt region. We pay our deepest respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and to the ongoing cultural, spiritual, and ecological stewardship of the Bear River people. May our presence and our work on these lands honor their resilience and sovereignty and continue to a future rooted in truth, healing, and relationship. Welcome to the Truth as Medicine podcast. I'm your host, John Reeves, and today with me, I have some amazing Indigenous women in healthcare. I've got LaWanda Green, who is currently the board chair of the United Indian Health Services, also the board chair of the California Rural Indian Health Board. She's a seated member of the National Indian Health Board and also a seated member of the Elk Valley Rancheria Tribal Council, her tribe. And also with me, I have Valarie Reed, who is a member of the Yurok Tribe, the largest tribe in the state of California. They get mad at me if I don't say that after their tribal name. And she's also the Health and Human Services Director for the Wiyot Tribe. LaWanda, would you like to tell us about your background and do a brief introduction?
Sure. So really brief introduction. I am the daughter of a lifelong council member for Elk Valley Rancheria, Mr. John Green. I love to bring him forward each time I can because I wouldn't be who I am without him and my wonderful mother and grandmother. I'm a third generation board member for UIHS, and I am blessed to do what I do because of those people. And I probably should take this time to add a disclaimer that here going forward throughout this podcast, all opinions are my own and they do not represent my tribe nor any of the boards that I sit on. Thank you.
That's awesome. I'm going to weave into some of those opinions and see if we can get deep. I'm just kidding. Val, would you like to introduce yourself to the community?
Sure. So my name is Valarie Reed. I'm a member, as you said, of the largest tribe of California, the Yurok Tribe. And I've got 30 plus years in community-focused work. I am a former member of many boards and sit on a lot now, but not as many as I used to. I love the work that I do for community focus. I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. I'm a mover and a shaker. And when people want things done, they call me in. So I don't know what else you'd like to know, but again.
Hey, that is enough.
Hey, I got lots of years in this work.
As we continue on here, you're going to see the mover and the shaker in both of these guests. I like to start each one of these podcasts with a little bit of a recap in how we met. I personally believe that our individual story and how we meet people through the natural progression of life really is meaningful. So I'll start with, recollection of meeting both of you. And then I would be interested in your guys' recollection of that as well. But leading with LaWanda, I was the CEO of United Indian Health Services for a few years, actually during COVID, I believe from 2018. And then when I transitioned away from the organization officially was in 2022. So I met LaWanda as well as her dad, John, who, I will say is one of my favorite people as well. He is definitely one of those individuals. He's a very soft-spoken man, but when he has something to say, everybody knows because his message is always so powerful. And LaWanda, you got that trait from him for sure. But my recollection of our first meeting was during the interview process. We met in Crescent City, where Elk Valley Rancheria is, and you were taking me on a tour of, the northern. So for perspective, United Indian Health Services, American Indians and Alaska Natives in Humboldt and Del Norte counties, extreme northern California, very remote territory up there. But when I met LaWanda, we got in the car and somebody was driving us around. I think your dad sat in the front seat and you and I sat in the back, and we just talked the entire time. Took us through Elk Valley lands. And then I think we even went up to Smith River, just north of where you are, and then down into Yurok lands, downriver. I always get those mixed up, but Witchpeck area, we kind of looped around. It was an amazing introduction to the geographic location as well as the lands. And, I got a few glimpses of beauty there as we were driving, but the conversation was what struck me the most. I mean, getting to know you and your history and your background, it was just, I knew at that point, I was like, I'm here. And I don't know if I told you guys, but I used to live in Vancouver, Washington. So, I was a single dad raising my kids, and my kids would love to go on little escapades. So we would go down to Northern California, Crescent City, because again, we weren't too far. And, I'll never forget going down there and just seeing how beautiful it was, but taking the kids to the redwoods and then on Yurok land where the gas station is. And I remember driving by and thinking, man, I wonder who does their healthcare. And then to find out 4 years later, there I was working with these great people. But that is my recollection. That drive, it was like a 3-hour drive. And, I just thoroughly enjoyed that. And then Val, my story with meeting Val, and I'll just give it briefly because I'm sure the way you tell it, I don't do it any justice. But I met Val also during the course of my interview. And, they brought me into the conference room, and I had here maybe 40 leaders of it, United Indian Health Services. We were eating, and I was just kind of talking to people, and I won't steal Val's thunder, but that is the dialogue or the interaction that I remember from us. So, LaWanda, I can flap my gums forever, but from your perspective, what's the first recollection of us meeting each other?
So my recollection of meeting you is that everything that we told you, you just soaked right in with no judgment. You were willing to dive into those big, scary places with us as most people see them. Witchpeck is pretty rough to get to, and you were game. You were ready to go. You were caring and interested and definitely just right in there with us as far as our people went. You had your own interesting stories. You've definitely had a good, colorful life. And I just knew as soon as we met that you were the right fit for United Indian Health Services, that you were going to take us to that next level. And you certainly did.
I love that. And yes, I think you're exactly right. I was the right person for the right time, and we'll probably talk about that journey a little bit more later on. But Val, okay, tell the story, Val, because you tell it so well.
As you said, we were at what we called, or what we were told was a meet and greet for potential hires as a leader for UIHS. And we were gracious enough to have a few applicants that were, we'll say, semi good and a good fit. But during our meet and greet, John, I listened to you give your spiel and give us your history and all the work that you had done previously. And I could feel that you were passionate, but I also felt a little bit protective of UIHS, of course, and the people that work there. And I told you that I didn't believe that we were looking for a leader. I believed that we had a great team, and I believed that we needed a good coach. So someone that could coach us into the right avenues and resources for what was needed to lead UIHS into a better place. So that's what I told you.
And I
think
love
you were
that.
a little stunned at that point.
I was. You saw the shock on my face.
I
But,
did.
it was really good because those words resonated with me. And, as leaders, not only in healthcare, but as organizations, both tribal and non-tribal, I think sometimes leaders, us CEOs, us top level managers really get lost in our ego sometimes. And we think it's all about us when the reality is, and I was just talking to my wife Pui yesterday about this exact same thing. I said, us as leaders, if we're really doing things correctly, our managers are, the people that are really doing the work, they should be the smartest ones in the room. And if we're constantly looking for, somebody who doesn't match what we think our intellect is, we're doing the organization and the people that we serve a huge injustice. So those words were super fitting. And my UIHS days are some of my fondest days. And continuing the relationship with you two. Dinner last night for the audience. We had a chance every time I'm up in this neck of the woods. We always take an opportunity to sit and have dinner. And so we've said a lot about UIHS. Can you give me a little backstory of what UIHS is? Who does it serve? The type of services? Those kind of things. LaWanda, did you want to start? And then maybe Val, you can weave in because you receive services there as well.
United Indian Health Services, UIHS, what started out as a single clinic in little tiny Trinidad, and they're up on their tribal land, their little tiny building has turned into this. I think we have 7 clinics now. We might even have more. Turned into this beautiful organization that has multiple clinics that serves over 12,000 individuals. And we offer healthcare to our membership or clients. We don't like to call them patients because they are members. It's for them.
And we have no patience.
That's true.
Val with the color commentary. You're going to enjoy this one.
Yeah, she's not wrong. You have to have a certain personality to be a receptionist in Indian country. We know this. We try to offer as culturally appropriate. I shouldn't say appropriate, as culturally
Competent's a good word.
Yeah,
competent.
relevant.
Yes, that's good. Competent healthcare as possible to our Indigenous people. And this is hard for me because I live, breathe, and sleep UIHS. To give the perspective of what we do in a terminology that non-natives might understand might be better for Val, because for me, this is just how we breathe life into our people. I think I'm going to turn it over to Val because I think she can better put into words exactly what it is we do.
All right. So that's the beginning. Just so you guys know, my family's also sat on the board since way in the beginning. Jessie Exline or Jessie Van Pelt. It was my grandmother. And I've had many of my family members involved with UIHS through the years. In the beginning, and it was just a CHRs that started. And in the real beginning, it was because the need was great during the time that this was founded. UIHS was founded. It was a group of women that got together, wrote down some ideas, truthfully, at a kitchen table on a napkin, because our people were not getting health care. They were not getting any type of care. They didn't have any kind of insurance, that type of thing. So since the beginning, they were humble beginnings, but it was an action-packed group of people that moved it forward. And the tribes, out of the 11 tribes in the Northern California area, 9 of them, I believe, still hold resolution and are clients, active clients of United Indian Health Services. So, and that covers a lot of territory in this area.
How much territory? For those that are not familiar with the area, how much territory are we talking?
Well, we are talking Southern Oregon down to about, I want to say, the Garberville area, inland to almost Redding.
Yeah.
So for anybody and those are, both, and Oregon all the way in as well.
Yeah.
So
Garberville is about 5 hours north of San Francisco,
yes.
right?
Yes. So when people say Northern California and they go, "Oh, you're from San Francisco," I go, "No, there's another 6 hours of California after that." They're like, "What?"
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to explain that, right?
Yeah.
When you talk to people, Northern California, for other people that don't live here, it's a Bay Area. So, and when we say rural, when I say we live down at the end of the road, go to the sign that says end of the road, and they go, "Really?" I'm like, "Yes."
See, I love that piece that you gave, Val. I love that piece that you gave because I didn't get that. I was an unruly teenager and I was told this is what you're going to do.
Right.
This
So,
is your
and
place.
hundreds of years ago, we would have been mentored. Villages, it really does take a village to raise a child. And the village would take care of every member of that village. And they would mentor you in where your strengths and your passions lie. And they would teach you and they would build you up. And that's exactly where you come from. That's exactly where I come from. We were lucky enough to have families that either escaped from boarding schools or came home, or were fortunate enough not to be captured to be sent there. But they really worked hard to form their families into being great leaders for the future. And they expect us to do the same, right? Yeah. And nobody had an exact map of what we were supposed to do. I was taught many things. So I have a really broad array of, knowledge and skill and different things like that. But I was taught to use what I could envision. I'm good at seeing the picture, but putting the things in. So I'm better at the science of it than the basic study of it. So, but that's what our village did. That's what your parents did, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, you might as well.
Yeah, you're right. My dad always said to us that we never turned anybody away. Everybody was good at something, even if it was just packing wood in. You found that little niche that they were capable of, and you built that up in them, so everybody felt welcome and everybody felt useful. We never turned anybody away.
Right. And
That's
everybody was balanced equal. Nobody was higher than the other. No one became the chief or the princess or all of those things. It really did take all of those parts to fit together to make that picture strong and that foundation really move forward.
Yeah, I think that's still important today. John,
Absolutely.
that's one of the things that you have that I've always told people. You can work in Indian country all day long, but the ones who succeed in Indian country are the ones who have a heart for it.
Yes. And the
That's
understanding of what happened. And I know that you've been adopted into, John, I'd like you to tell us a little about that.
Sure.
So I met
Yeah.
your mother, your adopted mother.
You
I
met my
believe in
hunker
Oregon
mom.
when I came up. So you want to tell us a little bit about that and we'll head off there.
Yes. Yeah. So, I have a hunker mom. And so I am formally adopted in the traditional way for the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe up in South Dakota. My hunker mom, Candace Hollowhorn, and her family, they just mean the world to me. So when I escape this everyday reality that is my life, I love to go to South Dakota and connect and really understand, because to me, it's really important. I mean, one, it's not normal for somebody, as I mentioned, I'm white. And when you see the picture, to be formally adopted and in the traditional way. So I'm really honored to have that connection and that relationship. But yeah, it was. What did you think of my hunko mom? She's kind of quiet, but she's a force in her own right.
Right. And I brought her a gift when I met her.
Mm-hmm.
From this area, I brought her, and LaWanda, you'll recognize what I say, a Sammy Cooper piece. I brought her a beautiful necklace, and I brought the shaman that was there with you guys.
Yes.
So I brought him one as well, but she just hugged me. And after I spoke, you know my humor. Of course,
Yes.
we were at dinner. We were laughing, but she understood where I came from, because I was taught to speak respectfully to my elders at where they are, not where I am. Right. And she got that right. And I just had the utmost respect for her. And I knew that she did not adopt John lightly. And that really made my respect for him just grow tenfold, because it's hard to find people that are non-native that understand and have the passion. I know LaWanda will agree with me, to hear what we have to say and help do that. Help
absolutely.
Get those resources, because there is another side of the world, right? Like that. And as a Native person, and John, you've learned to walk in two worlds, but as a Native person, we have to survive in two worlds.
I'm so glad to elaborate on what it means to walk in two worlds.
So walking in two worlds, as a Native person, I'm from a traditional family. I'm a traditional person, right? I run camps in our ceremony times. I am a lot of times the person that people will come to do like kitchens, and I run a kitchen, which is a very important part of that piece. So I make sure that everybody has sustenance, and in a good way, to do what they need to do. But that's my part of the traditional family. That's what I was mentored to do. In order to do that, I also need to be able to survive in a world that doesn't surround me with tradition. But I need to be able to walk in that world carrying my tradition and my culture. And I'll give you a great prime example. So at the time that UIHS was born, or way back, so let's just say the 70s, there was a lot of uneducated Native Americans, right? They were getting taken advantage of. The government was running us over. We were still, it took us forever to be able to vote. Took us forever. We're still going through historical trauma over boarding schools. No other group of people can ever say that they've had trauma like that, except for the Jewish people, but not in this country. So it was at that time when our people got together and said, we have to do certain things. We have to educate our people to be able to come to the table and meet them head on and be smarter than them. And I will say that my Awak Uncle Frank Lara told me, Valerie, never bow down to what they know. Stand up, walk past them, and learn more than them. Then meet them at the table, right? And it made it like a humbling experience where I didn't carry that enigma that I had to be better than them. I just had to meet them where they were and surpass that, right? To be able to work for Indians in Indian country. So
I love that.
Me too. I never got that from you. I'm glad I joined this today.
Yeah, we get to see a whole new
And just so everybody knows, I love these two people so much. I can
someday.
be myself with them, but I can also be, and I'm not much different. I'm very, you guys will know, I'm very transparent. I don't hold back. And that's part of being a mover and a shaker, having that strong aspect. I don't last a lot of places just because I don't back down, but I
Yeah.
also fight for what's real, right? And go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So, well, it's not uncommon practice for natives to speak their mind, but it is common practice for them to be subdued, like kicked in the shin and told to bow down. That has never gone away. So I always have to try to find a way around that to still be respectful, respectful to my culture, respectful to my people. And when I say my people, I don't just mean the Yurok and the Chetco people that I'm from. I also mean all native people, all indigenous persons. So when I do work for all of them. I have to keep that in mind.
I was just going to say that, walking in two worlds, just to touch on what Val said, it's really outside of meeting them meeting them where they're at and moving past that, educating yourself past that. The hard part of that is learning how to, I don't want to say swallow down, but really that's what it feels like to me, having to swallow down the disrespect and the disregard that they have as they look down on you, because I come from this little tiny area in Northern California, and my reservation was 2 blocks when it started. So how could I possibly have an education that's equal to theirs, or any life experience that could be equal to theirs? So walking in two worlds for me was learning how to balance that, to not get angry and freak out and throw disrespect back in their face because they brought it to me. It was just calmly saying, okay, you're entitled to feel how you feel. I appreciate where you're coming from. Now let me show you a different way. Let me show you what a little small town native girl from a teeny tiny reservation can teach you about us.
Yeah. That's really powerful. So do you guys face the disrespect in the course of your normal daily duties still to this day?
Yes.
Yes,
Can
absolutely.
can you give me a couple examples? I know we live in this world, and a lot of the leaders, what I hope to accomplish with this podcast is to give people an understanding of the world in which we live and operate in. But, just an example of something like that for our listeners.
I have one. A few years back, we went to Washington, D.C. to meet with some of the congressional leaders. And during that trip, and it wasn't intentional by any means, they weren't purposely disrespectful to us. But during that trip, they were talking about how from Wichpec, it could take 2 to 3 hours to get to your doctor's appointments. In Washington, D.C., taking 2 to 3 hours to get somewhere across the city is not a big deal. As our elder told this story, she then told them that it takes 2 to 3 hours by boat at times. And there was a collective gasp throughout the entire room that fell into silence. It's that every day still. 10 steps forward, big, huge leap back, always, in trying to break down the perceptions that people have of Native American tribes.
That kind of thing bothers me. I mean, honestly, that's why I got into this world. And, not really a motivation, but I'm being honest. I mean, this is the first world that has really opened their arms to me and accepted me as a regular individual. And, I'm not one of those people who is, fighting this fight for no reason. I'm really fighting for our people, for our communities, for our voice, for the recognition. But to hear that it still happens to this day is just, breaks my heart. Val, what about you? Do you
I
have
have a little bit of an older story that I'd like to tell. So I worked for the Yurok tribe. Well, before it was the tribe, I worked during the Hoopaw Yurok Settlement Act when the Department of Interior appointed a team called the Yurok Transition Team to transition them from removing themselves from the Hoopaw role and creating a Yurok tribal membership role, which was a hairy incident. The thing was awful because we had to come up with guidelines and, all of that. We created a preamble, a constitution, and then we did the separation of land, separation of all of that. But I was designated to be the travel partner or create all the travel for the community members that we would take all over the place, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, all through California, to gather information from people who claim to be Yurok, right? Well, one of our trips took us to Washington, D.C., like you said, LaWanda, and we were fighting for federal recognition And we took an elder that was 88 years old. And as we stood on the steps of the White House where they wanted to have their talk, that woman stood up. And it's probably because she used a walker. She was hunched over. And when she stood proudly. She moved that walker to the side. She asked them, the head of Department of Interior and the President of the United States, she said, how can you ask us while you're standing there that we need to be recognized? Why do we have to put it on paper when I'm standing right in front of you and you can see me? Right. And they were like you slapped them. Right.
Yeah.
But one of their people stood up and said, it's not just about you.
Yeah.
It's about all those other people. It needs to be in writing. It was almost an uproar. But it was a total blatant disrespect of not just that person, but all that person had already lived through for 88 years. All the things that she had seen come against Native Americans, and the government still just didn't want to recognize. We're forced today, and I know LaWanda can attest to this as well, John, you too, that at certain time we knew where we belonged. And I'm just going to use a Little River down by Clam Beach as an example. The Wiyots had the south side, and the Yuroks came to the north side of that river. They shared hunting camps, they shared fishing camps, and they didn't have to draw a tow line in the sand. But the government has forced us to lay a claim and make it a rule that we draw a tow line in the sand. We're living in a different time. That's what I'm talking about, learning how to meet them where they are. You know what I mean? And I know LaWanda can attest to that. She now has lines that her family never had to, not go over before.
Absolutely.
And those are hard things to teach generations of people who have been taught to live, say, on a reservation or in a very close proximity. So you have to go where they are. You have to meet them where they are.
So I think often about the way the federal government is systematic in what they're doing. And as we look in our rear view, not so far in our past, all of these injustices have been happening. But over the course of history, we get further and further and further from these situations. How do you feel, or do you have a comment on, what the federal government continues to do to this day to maybe lower or diminish what it is to be an Indigenous person, be it tribal or individually? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, I know. I'm gonna open it up right now because that's a fully
Let me
loaded
guzzle
question.
some coffee before I answer that.
I'm sitting here thinking, is this political suicide? I don't know.
I will remind everybody of your disclaimer. These are your thoughts and your thoughts only.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in and say that one of the ways they continue to diminish it is we have rights. We're written into the Constitution. They will take care of us. We will receive education and health care because we've already paid with our lives. They've never funded that health care at the full dollar capacity. We are left with scraping by with less than 50% of the funding each year, while at the same time being told that we need to be self-sufficient. We've risen to the challenge. We have become self-sufficient in ways they never thought that we could. And now as we do that, they say, well, we're going to pull back even more funding if we can because you don't really need it. You're self-sufficient. It's nowhere near enough to take care of things. And the amount of money that we're able to pull in to remain as self-sufficient as we can just doesn't take care of the needs of the Native American people all across the United States.
Yeah. Economic wise, for those of you that may be unfamiliar with the world in which that we walk and we operate in, we have what's called self-determination, right? So tribes have the ability to manage and own and distribute, any number of things on behalf of their people. So we have what's called a tribal 638, as we often refer to it as. It's a government to government relationship, which really says, and going to what LaWanda just said, and I'm just, putting it in layman's terms, that in order for the federal government to honor its commitment to providing health care and education for our American Indian Alaska Native people, all us as a tribe or our people need is the money in which to do so. So there are agreements that exist, they're government-to-government relationships, which basically says, federal government, if you're going to honor that obligation, we know what's best for our people. We just need the money in which to do that. Now, I've been all over the country working with tribes and, almost every state. And what I have seen, it only covers about 20 to 30%. It's all formula driven. The numbers are never accurate. I was working with a tribe the other day whose numbers are probably 3,000 less than, what they have in their enrollment numbers versus what Indian Health Services has. But that real self-determination piece is their ability to own and operate and manage healthcare systems. And the Federal Register sets an encounter rate that tribes are able to get for providing services for their governmental payer members. And it's been very lucrative. You just have to look at the Cherokee Nation and what they've been able to accomplish in the past 10 years. I mean, owning hospitals, rebuilding hospitals. They have their own medical school. And, anybody who knows me has known I've been saying for a very long time that healthcare is the new casino for tribes. Really, all we need to fit by definition in order to utilize that third-party revenue is to do something that's positive for our people. It's a very broad definition. But as a result, we have very sophisticated healthcare delivery in pockets of the country for the tribes that have truly leveraged that business model. And now the feds are trying to, claw that back or remanipulate the agreements so that we, again, have to do more with less.
I'd
That's
like
what
to
she's
jump in
talking
here,
about.
John, really quick.
Please do.
So I just want to say this because I know LaWanda is speaking correctly. I know you're speaking correctly. I have, me, I got to think outside the box. You put me in the
I
box,
love
I
it.
can't think. I just lay down.
Yes.
I can't think then. So for me, I know the government's always going to hold the almighty dollar in front of us, right? Like a carrot. But the thing is, for tribes, we have risen to a point for tribal people, recognized or not, that we have to turn away from the carrot, use it to our advantage, get as much as we can, when we can, use it for the best that we can. But we also have to be innovative enough to say when the government shuts down, it doesn't affect us at all, right? That's their problem. That doesn't have to be our problem, right? So for me, just working with the Wiyot at this point in time, I've only been here for a little over a year, but I have, like I said, actually 35, almost 40 years in doing this kind of work. And for me, it's coming up with innovative ways where if you pull my funding, that doesn't hurt us at all. That we've invested back in ourselves to be able to stand alone. Because at some point, if our government fell, most of the tribes would go out as well. A lot of them.
Don't we have that going on right now? Isn't that happening right now?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I can say we're moving along just fine right now.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, how you're able to move along just fine? Almost too big to fail. We use that in the business world. But can you talk about some of those innovations? So, another loaded question.
I don't think she should.
To say I don't feel like it's loaded. Okay, it's loaded, but I don't want to share. You don't share trade secrets, John.
I know that. Doing any research on me, you can tell that trade secrets in me been a bit of a theme.
This is off the subject, but not. For those out there that are listening, I don't want this podcast to come across like we're just sitting here saying, give us our fair share because we can't take care of ourselves. Being creative and trying to fight for who we are and what we believe in. And I won't even say for what we believe in, just to show, to be respected for our identity, for existing. It's not just about healthcare dollars or the way that the government was supposed to help us and they let us down. We have I had to pull up the name because I couldn't remember the act itself, but it's the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978. That's not very long ago. It had to go through Congress and become an act for us to be able to practice our religious ceremonies without fear of persecution. Those types of things. For all you listeners out there, don't just think that we're just sitting here saying, give us these dollars. That's
I agree.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a very important perspective.
So on my wall, I just want to say, I want to share a sign I have on my wall. Anywhere I go, I take it with me. Because in the kind of work that I believe that I was mentored to do is enable until they're able. Right? So if I don't give the skill, we can help them to the point where they don't have to look back and ask us again. They're able to do that, myself included. As a whole, as an individual, as a community, you enable them. But in between that enable and able comes a whole set of education, skills, knowledge, so that person doesn't ever have to, or that community never has to look back and be unable to do it again. So enable till they're able. And it's very simple, but there's a whole piece in between that enable and able. You can't just expect someone to, and I think we kind of talked about this and hit it on at dinner, and I'll just say with casino dollars, right? And it's just about teaching life skills and mentoring. We're missing that whole piece, I believe, about mentoring from a village. There's a whole generation, almost 2 generations, that missed out on a lot of that mentoring. So they don't have a purpose. They don't know what their role is. So going back to square one, teaching that culture, integrating it into everything that they do, but so that they have something firm to believe in and stand on and turn to, right? And educating them to the point where they are able to do it. So we enable till they're able.
Love it. You guys operate in a very political environment. It's lots of red tape. You have to go through, a systematic process in order to move forward. How do you keep yourself from getting lost in that red tape and keep your initiatives or your voice or your advocacy focused on your people?
I think through our various ceremonies throughout the year, when we advocate, we take time for ourselves as a group to spend time together and celebrate each other. Give honor to our ancestors and give honor to those that we're bringing up ourselves who will be our future. Spend a lot of time laughing.
No.
And crying too.
Yeah, that comes in there too.
Yes, that's true. As far as how we keep it going out in our community, well, we've been fortunate along the way to meet a lot of allies. Yourself, we've met a lot of congressional leaders who are allies for us, people that help us carry our story forward, and we educate the others, spend a lot of time writing white papers and educating the others, and always, always, always in the downtime. Like I said, I can't say it enough. Spend time celebrating ourselves and celebrating each other through our ceremonies, through dinners, through gatherings. Everywhere we go, we have gatherings.
Do you guys have Apple TV? Do you guys watch that? What is that Hawaiian? Jason Momoa has the Hawaiian history. Chief of War. I'm sorry, my wife had a phone a friend. Have you guys seen that show?
I only watch it to see him.
You and probably 80% of everybody else out there.
I could turn the volume down and be okay. I accidentally saw it. I was like, whoa.
You're like, what is this?
Yeah. I'm going to miss work because I need to watch this.
It's so interesting because they talk about that it wasn't the appropriate time in which to do that film. And really what they do is they're capturing Hawaiian history. And then it's interesting to kind of read those blogs because some people think it's fantasy, and they're like, oh, I know he's going to turn out to be the chief, not really understanding that there's a real story there. But I say that because from your guys' perspective, do you see maybe an opportunity to highlight, the cultural pieces? Is that something that's meant to be kept sacred? What are your guys' thoughts on that kind of stuff?
I think it depends on what instance you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You always should pay respect to your culture and your tradition. When you introduce yourself, if it's a big crowd and they don't know you, you would introduce what family you're from, just like LaWanda did. Always speak of your ancestors who made who you are. So it's a different level of, if we wanted to tell the story of like ceremony in this area or things like that, you have to be very careful to just be respectful of what you want people to know. Because every time you open the door about piquing curiosity, there's always 10 people who want to walk through that door to find out more. So we've had that as Native people, especially through here with Krober and all of his cronies coming through, and everybody telling our story and writing books about us. And then, we're like, what are you talking about? And I laugh because a lot of them say that our natives used humor, and they would just laugh at them. They would tell them something and just make them laugh. So that's written throughout all the books through here. And it's funny because an elder will use humor, where a lot of people use humor, like myself, to kind of ward off deeper meanings when they're trying to do. So it depends on what I think that you're trying to highlight.
Right.
Because a lot of people, and I'll say working for the Wiyot people, also a disclaimer, this is my opinion, they overuse Indian Island. and they love to relive the massacre. Well, they don't know what that means to people here, right? Like they don't know what that brings up for them. I've got an elder that will tell you a story about how his ancestor paddled a canoe away in the bay full of children. I have somebody here that will tell you a story of how they survived by sucking through a reed underwater.
Wow.
Air through a reed. Like
So we got
everybody wants to retell that story, but they don't realize what that unpeels for individuals. So we try not to retell that as it's hard. You just have to be very respectful.
I agree. And we've opened the doors in our community, as everyone knows, to some of our cultural dances that we've done. But you have to be so careful with that because, as Val said, you've got 10 people trying to peek through the door, and not all of them have good intentions for us.
Yeah.
My favorite, excuse my language, my favorite is when you get a person who is not Native at all who wants to quote a very bastardized version of your story to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And they
Have you
speak
had
with
that
such
happen?
conviction.
Yeah,
Really?
that happens all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
A lot of times, even master's thesis, I laugh when Cal Poly, they'll invite me, when people are getting to read their thesis, and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, those
What
are
is this
fun.
talking about, right? Like, and you've
They
got
invite me
Rupon,
to listen
Yurok,
to
and
the
all these
story.
guys mixed up, and this is Elk Valley area. What are you talking about? Right? But I don't, that's just me, but I agree with LaWanda. It's like, yeah, you just learned a whole different thing about yourself. None of it pertained to you.
It's when you lean in, you're like, really? Tell me more.
Exactly. Let's go. Tell me the real story. Yeah.
We're talking a little bit about culture. Um, and kind of moving it back to healthcare and compliance and systems because we operate in a very regulated environment. But how do you ensure culture doesn't get lost in compliance and systems when we understand that's such an important piece of how we deliver care?
We, at the board level, we add it through policies. We put it into policies and procedures. We do it through everyday practice. We do say, without saying too much, we open up meetings with blessings. I know not in the non-native setting, a lot of people will say it's a prayer. It's just really a blessing. It's really just giving thanks for still being able to breathe today. Thank you to our Creator for allowing us to do what we do, for feeling like we are the voice that needs to be at this table, because how else will we get there? A lot of people tend to look at that as throwing religious practices on people, say as a church leader coming and sitting at the table and demanding that you do it their way. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. We do it that way with people. They're free to participate or not participate. As we go forward, each year we learn new ways to incorporate our culture into our policies. I actually am this is a subject that I love because I'm proud of it. We don't just incorporate our culture. We want to celebrate you, each of you who is here helping us attain quality health care for our people. We want to celebrate you with us.
And I take a little bit of a different view at this point in time. It's just things I've learned through the years and I admire that people use blessings and prayers because we do, and those things, and celebrate the culture. But I was taught, and like I was told you guys, that I was mentored to run my kitchen. Everything that I do in that kitchen has to be done in mind that I'm putting the best, most positive things and thoughts and movements in for goodness of everybody who's there. And when you open a meeting, for instance, you want things to go well. You want what you say to be delivered well, whether it's liked or not liked, but you want to do it in a good way. And when you have bad intentions or you have bad thoughts or you have all of that, and it will show. But you want to ward off all of that. You want everybody to be in a good frame of mind. It's not that it's different. It's just a little different. Celebrating that. And people like to call it whatever because they're so enraptured in, well, that's a blessing. That's a prayer. I'm not religious, or all of those things. Well, the thing is, on a daily basis, you should be respecting the culture that you're assisting in healthcare. Because as a client looking the other way at you, you don't know how to face them where they are. So you have to take healthcare to where the people are, in their heart, in their mind. You have to know a little bit of history. So you have to be culturally competent to give good healthcare.
Yeah. I'm glad that you guys bring this up because on the last episode of my podcast, I had one of my close personal friends who's an intuitive counselor. So she's a spiritual medium. But she made the point that our actions, our words, that in which we do are living. We're intentional. And what you're basically saying is confirming, the same mindset that she has, that the work that we do over the course of our day, the actions, the words that we speak are living. They're real. So interesting to hear that you guys share the same. So staying on this topic just a little bit, do you have a moment where culture or ceremony changed an outcome that you can think of?
An outcome in which way?
Just could be for the positive. I'm trying to think of a good example from my perspective. Because what I'm challenged with right now was the situation that I won't get too into details, but as I bring these new health systems into fruition, as we build them, as we make them real, operating systems, I sometimes feel like I'm shortchanging the community by not taking an opportunity to integrate that culture into what I'm creating with a new health system, a clinic, or a service line. I also know that I'm probably not the one who can do that for the community that we serve. But from your perspective, is that an important part? I've kind of heard us talk about how you lead your meetings with a prayer, good intentions. And Val, when you make a meal for somebody, the presence or where you're at is actually getting infused in that meal that you are serving someone. So do you guys have examples of where culture or ceremony changed an outcome positively? And if you don't, that's fine.
I was going to say, first of all, excuse me, blessing, not prayer.
Okay. Blessing.
Blessings are much different than prayers.
Okay. See, my whiteness is showing again.
We do both in different settings. I couldn't give you an example of where a cultural gathering or a cultural situation has improved that I've noticed, because we just live that way. We live it every day. So I've not personally had someone come up to me and tell me that has changed their life and they're going to go do something different. Not for me, sorry.
No, that's all good.
I do actually have one.
You do?
I actually have two, but I'll just give you the smooths over both of them. And it has to do with behavioral health. A behavioral health client that we have, a member that needed services. They didn't realize they needed services. They have come to realize since then. But when I first got here, involved them in culture, and we started making necklaces. We started getting their hands in the soil. I have a program called Healing Through Horticulture. That young child was getting sent out of the area to lockdown facilities or to any kind of mental health facility because he was threatening to hurt himself, going through a parent custody battle. And I can say this with, because this happens everywhere. But introduce this person to culture. That person danced for the first time, never been introduced to culture before at Wiyot Day with a beautiful song. So had created this, he put all of his fears and all of his bad feelings, as he calls them, into that song so he could shout it out and get rid of them and share with people that he was trying not to hurt. By gaining support from our people standing around listening, it's a natural thing that we do, like LaWanda says. But I mean, it's intense when you can see it come alive before your very eyes. You can see that culture gave them maybe the confidence they were lacking, the insecurity that they felt. It gave them like a type of culture blanket that they could rely on themselves. They had never sung before. They wore regalia that they had made. And that all happened in like a 4-month period. So it was awesome to see, and they're still active right now. They're actually going to be leading some groups for us, some youth groups. So, I mean, it's real for me, and I work at a different level at this point in my career, back down to, on the day-to-day, moccasins on the trail kind of thing, as where my lovely friend LaWanda is in a different role than me right now. But we still can talk about everything that we do because I've been there and I'm going to go there again. But right now I'm doing this. And so getting back to getting my hands in the soil, just to remind myself, it's real. And teaching it to someone who's never had it, just opening the door so they can experience it, is real. So that's, and it's not rewarding to me. It's not that I don't do it for that. I don't do it for money. I don't do it to, put a mark on my chart or whatever. It was very exhilarating to see that culture is alive.
I love that. And I don't know if you guys have heard this story yet, so stop me because it's been a while since we all hung out and worked together. Now I'm down in an urban program in Los Angeles, and we have about 242,000 American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiians who live in the greater LA area. And a lot of the people that we serve, their families are second generation, first generation who were relocated. So moved from their homelands to, the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, but in this case, LA. And we had the vice president of the Navajo Nation coming to visit us and our leadership. And she's one of my close personal friends. I love her to death. I think she's amazing. But we also, on that day that she was there, and she was serving us fry bread, we also had senior day. So I had two seniors who had grown up in the LA area and not in Navajo. I had just met the majority of those seniors that day for the first time, and they were telling me where they were from, what tribe, and two in particular were sitting right next to each other. And, I was like, have you guys met the VP Montoya of the Navajo Nation? They're like, no, we get newsletters from our government all the time. I said, why don't you guys come outside? I want to introduce you. So I brought these two elders, escorted them outside, and I asked the VP, I'm like, hey, these two are Navajo. I'd like to introduce them to you. And it was a very powerful situation for me. And I'll carry this probably until my grave. But, Navajo is probably the first language the majority of Navajos do learn growing up out there. And she turned to introduce herself in Navajo. One of the Navajo elders, or one of the elders, spoke Navajo back to her, and the other one did not. And I could tell that the one who did not know her language just kind of felt a little bit uneasy. And then, the VP switched to English and did the introduction there. But I got to see in that moment the importance or the difference that culture makes in an individual. I have two elders who were sharing their language. And as we were walking the elders back, one of them said, it's been 20 years since I spoke my language. I'm surprised I still remember some of it. But the other elder, just felt a little bit lost just because she couldn't communicate in the Navajo language. And I've since talked to her a couple of times, and she's trying to learn. It was very impactful for her as well. But to see and witness that the dialogue and the importance of just something as simple as your own language has on individuals, both positively and negatively, that's something, again, I'll carry until my grave. But it really highlights the importance of the work that we do that we're doing in the urban settings. Thank you guys for sharing that, because that, is interesting to me. Very powerful thing.
The Navajo Nation is very powerful for anybody who's ever been there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I shared with you guys, we did a conference out there, International Uranium Conference. Don't ever go there in the dead of winter. It really does snow there. Yeah. But when we had to speak to anybody in Navajo, when we had to speak and do our conference and all our presentations, the Navajo people and the Navajo council member, everybody demand that you speak to them in Navajo. If you do not know Navajo, you have to hire an interpreter to speak English to Navajo. They demand it out of form. And I felt that as the highest respect, that if you're coming to us, you will do things our way.
Fantastic.
Way, respectfully. And I just thought, that always stuck with me. I was like, man, that was powerful. And how would the government feel if we went to speak them all in our languages? Right? So that's what we need to remember, is we need to put that in our pocket, and not so much, but use it as a goal. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be our language per se, but we need to know all about our people to be able to represent them.
I'm glad that you bring that up, because we also had a gentleman who was Aboriginal from Australia who came out to Los Angeles and meet with us and talk a little bit. And what he has gone through with his government, the Australian government, and how the community where he lives and that he's a part of, they demand that respect with the government now. And he kind of talked a little bit about, I'm going to have him on here. He's just a delightful gentleman, but he talks about how they command and demand that respect when they're interacting with the government. And first, it wasn't very well received, but they hung with it. And now the white side of the table understands that when his people come to the table to talk, that's a different way of being.
Yeah.
And
you better be ready.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Hey, and it's persistence, and it's being consistent about it. Not once in a while, but across the board.
Right.
Right. Like and have that respect across the board and teach that respect to your people.
Absolutely.
When you're mentoring them up, that this is why we do this. This is who we are. If we're going to be sovereign, this is what this means. Yeah. It's a huge lesson, but it's a good one.
We're talking a little bit about the next generation and really being strong for our future leaders. How do we grow, from your perspective, the next generation of Indigenous health leaders or Indigenous leaders in general?
I mean, from my perspective, I'm just going to do it the way that was done to me. Just keep taking my kids to these meetings and bringing them into these boardrooms with me and allowing them to witness the power that takes place in there.
Yeah. Going back to kind of the origination of UIHS, one of my favorite things to do when I was working there was bringing in the orientation. And everybody into the organization would first meet me in a boardroom, and I give them a presentation on the history of UIHS. But in that presentation, there is a photo. And in that photo is your dad, LaWanda, standing in the background. He couldn't have been 16 years old, just taking it all in. To your point, bringing our children there, bringing the youth, and now look at it. I mean, that was a very powerful picture from my perspective. I mean, the people that came in to see that, literally, as Val said, it was started on a napkin with some chicken scratches. And now I would say you guys are probably the largest provider of American Indian, Alaska Native healthcare in the state of California.
Part of the reason he got his driver's license was to be able to drive the ladies back and forth to meetings.
To be a fly on the wall on those drives, I can't imagine.
I've driven with John.
To your question, I think because we eat, sleep, and breathe that here in our households, and so our kids learn that. I think the easiest way and the simplest and most respectful way to bring in future leaders is to take those young ones and get down at their level and really listen and absorb in what they are saying to you, so they understand that no matter what they're telling you, it's all important.
What do you each want for tribal healthcare to look like in 10 years? 10 years into the future, what do you guys hope? What are these youth going to be the catalyst for in tribal healthcare?
I hope that in 10 years we have our own droves of Native specialists walking into our own internally run healthcare programs. I hope we've got the doctors, the psychiatrists, the heart surgeons, just all of these specialties, the brain surgeons. These are all our own homegrown kids pulled from these reservations and showing the absolutely amazing things that they can do. And they are bringing on the next generation and breathing that into them. And we've been able to move our government further out of how we take care of our own. It should be Native people taking care of Native people in their own Indigenous way without the constraints of the non-Native world.
Love that. I love that. Val, what about you?
So you're going to laugh at what I say.
I laugh at a lot of what you say.
A lot of people do. I have to do it that way because, if I did it the right way, I'd cry. So I view our youth a little differently. Not different from what she says, LaWanda says, but I have had the unfortunate experience of losing two of my children, my two daughters. At that point in time, I had to take on that role. I felt that I would have to do what they would have done, or I hope they would have done in our community, as well as my own presence. And so what I see for our youth is that in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, I am fortunate enough to be from this area where my family is from. I'm from the village of Chapek and Morek. And I know where that is. I know where my people come from, what land, what piece of the ocean, the sand in those things. I'm fortunate. My son is fortunate to know that and be a part of our ceremonies and traditionalists as well. And I am from a traditional family. I view our youth as what I call a grove of redwoods. A grove of redwoods, we have our old growth, we have the mid growth, and we have the new saplings that we have to plant. We have to plant them in our soil, in our lives, in our history and culture, as well as the outside world, the other world. And we have to, if you've ever seen a slice of an old growth redwood, you'll see how many rings it has. Every ring there has taught that tree something different.
Cool.
So as an elder, you have all those rings. So if we've done our job correctly, our youth will have many, many rings, and they'll know how to take care of our people and the needs of the people, not what we design that the people need, but listen to what the people really need. So that's how I feel that our youth are. It's a grove of redwoods. We need to keep planting the saplings, and they will grow into great old growth redwoods. So we just
Fantastic.
need to keep adding the rings.
I love that.
I'm going to take that and run with that, Val, next time I go meet with congressional leaders.
Okay.
I love it. Give her credit.
Absolutely.
Always. Well, guys, I know we have busy schedules and we have other stuff to get to. I've actually got to catch a flight here in a little bit, but I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together. I have one last question for both of you. If there's one truth or teaching you want listeners to carry, and, I know this is the first of many podcasts the three of us are going to have together, but until next time, what's that one truth or teaching you want listeners to carry with them until we meet again?
Well, for this first of many podcasts, then the one that comes to mind for me is just to be true to yourself. People always ask me how I say the hard things, and I say the hard things because I don't know how to be any other way. So always say the hard things. Always say your truth in a respectful way, because we can all do it respectfully. The only time I ever lose sleep is over the things I didn't say. So just be 100% true to yourself in the way that you know how, and always speak it out into the world.
I love that. You never know where it's coming from. Val.
So I firmly believe in a couple of things. I carry my root in my pocket every day. Angelica root, I carry that with me. LaWanda's a firm believer in Angelica root. I know. She laid eyes on the biggest piece I've seen in a long time. And she shared that picture with me. It was awesome. But I believe that a couple of things. I think that we need to celebrate community, which is a village way of life. But I also want to leave just this saying is that culture is medicine and community is healing. We have to be the ones that speak the truth. The truth is great medicine. And try not to speak it with regret. Don't raise regret. The truth is a truth. You shouldn't have to feel regretful for saying that.
Love that. LaWanda, Val, I can't thank you guys enough for your leadership, your candidness, and your service to our community, and to UIHS, CRIHB, the Wiyot Tribe for your guys' continued work, and, just those amazing things that you will continue to bring into the world. Thank you guys. Until next time, subscribe, share, and continue walking with us in Truth as Medicine. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Truth as Medicine. Be sure to join us for new episodes dropping about as often as I can interview people. The work has been really interesting and exciting with all the wonderful things that we have going on. But I'll keep interviewing people if you'll keep listening. If you have comments, questions, or guest recommendations, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out anytime at truth@indigenous.health. Until next time, thank you for listening and walking this path of healing and truth with us.